should have gotten congressional approval before launching 105 missiles at Syria. In fact, just hours before President Trump announced the strike, 88 members of the House signed a letter urging the president to consult with them before taking any action. One of those lawmakers who signed this bipartisan letter is Democrat John Garamendi of California. He's joining us now. Congressman, thanks for being here. If the president had come to you with this plan he carried out last night, would you have approved it?
Quite probably. If it was a very limited authorization to use military force, much as they did, that is to go after specific targets, the chemical gas manufacturing facilities, storage facilities, and the like, I think it probably would have passed nearly unanimously within both the House and the Senate. Probably some limitation on time, and if it's still a problem after 6 months or a year, the president could come back with proof and continue on. That didn't happen. Instead, now we have a raging controversy really around the world as to whether the president acted beyond his powers and illegally.
Could one argue, though, President Trump is upholding the red line President Obama didn't enforce?
No, that's not the case. Actually, President Obama did come to Congress, ask for an authorization to use force. It didn't happen. Simultaneously, he was working on a diplomatic effort, and that diplomatic effort, which involved Russia and the European Union, NATO, did result in the elimination of all of the chemical gases in Syria and the manufacturing facilities. That was certified by the UN Commission on Chemical Warfare. Now, in the intervening years, since 2014, obviously, Syria has rebuilt its chemical weapons program. Russia was supposed to have been a guarantor. They obviously did not guarantee that it would not reoccur, and therefore Russia has a serious liability here.
And just a couple of weeks ago, as you know, President Trump talked about withdrawing all of the U.S. resources from Syria. Would you support that?
No, I would not. The United States cannot walk away from another war. We're going to have to maintain our involvement in the area. I would suggest it be very, very limited, and it has to be done in coordination with our allies. You consider for now that we have Iran seriously involved in Syria as well as Iraq. We know that Israel is involved. We know that Turkey is involved. We know the Kurds are involved, and obviously Syria is involved. So it's a very, very complex place, and we cannot walk away. What we have to do is to develop a coherent goal. Sometime in the future, we would like this or that to be the result, and we have to have a strategy to get there. Unfortunately, this president doesn't operate that way. Wakes up in the morning, decides something ought to be done, tweets it out, expects it to happen. The next day, he reverses himself. And you just gave a wonderful and a very, very sad example of that kind of change. 2 weeks ago, we're going to get out. It's all over. We're getting out. And he said, leave it to others. Well, here we are, chemical attack a few days later, and now guess what? We're back militarily without an authorization to use force from the Congress of the United States. This is the Constitution of the United States. It says Congress has the only power to wage war. Article 2, Section 2 says the president is the commander-in-chief to conduct the war. No war was declared against the Syrian government, even though last night we did attack the Syrian government.
But do you see this as war?
Of course it is. It's an act of war. When you bomb somebody, that is an act of war, no doubt about it. And you know, that is the definition of an act of war. Unfortunately, the president didn't take the time to come to Congress to ask for that very simple declaration to go after the chemical manufacturing supplies and other elements of that program. Furthermore, he has no diplomatic strategy. There is no ambassador in Turkey. There's no ambassador in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and certainly we have not even seen a Secretary of State for the last couple of weeks.
Let me ask you about the Secretary of State nominee, Mike Pompeo. Do you have confidence in terms of strategy that as Trump's new Secretary of State, if confirmed, that he will be able to lead diplomatic efforts in dealing with the Syria crisis and the regional complexities around there?
He has no option but to do so. He has a rather bellicose way of going at these things, but he has a different job now. He's a very smart fellow, a lot of experience, and he's going to have to change from the military background that he has and the CIA background to a diplomatic background. I think he's capable of doing that. But the bottom line is, there's nobody else. This is the man that the president has chosen. Hopefully he'll be able to carry out that diplomatic task, which is so sorely missing from this current military effort and the launching of these numerous missiles against the chemical program in Syria.
When you talk about that being an act of war, do you worry about retaliation by Russia or Iran?
Well, they've both said that there should be consequences. We have no idea what those consequences are. We do know that Russia and Iran are known for their asymmetric actions. They're not likely to launch rockets against the United States or any of our troops anywhere, but they are asymmetric. And let me give you an example of Russia's asymmetric work in Syria. They have what we might call little green men. These are people that are soldiers that are trained by the Russian army and various elements. They are operating side by side with certain elements of the Syrian government. That organization attacked an American Kurd position in northern Syria about a month ago. There were heavy casualties amongst the Russians who were operating in that area. That is an example of an asymmetric operation. There are many other kinds of asymmetric operations, most of which come under the word terrorism, car bombings, all of those kinds of activities that are so horrific and so common. Horrific among the various things is the use of chemical weapons.
Yes.
And I really believe that if the president had come with a very straightforward request for an authorization to use military force, he would have had it in half a nanosecond.
Very quickly, if you will, if he comes to you now with the idea of using additional military force, would you vote for it?
I'd want to know what the overall strategy is. What's the purpose? What's the goal of such an activity? What is the strategy? Where are the diplomatic efforts? Who are our allies? Those kind of questions are critically important in any military operation. And if there's an additional military operation to take out additional chemical warfare activities in Syria, Mr. President, just come to the Congress.
Okay,
tell us
gotcha.
what it is you want to do. Tell us what the goal is. And you're highly likely to get approval of that.
Congressman John Garamendi, thank you very much.
Thank you.
New developments in the feud between President Trump and fired FBI Director James Comey.